In the heart of Lagos, there stood a peculiar shop. Unlike the other market stalls overflowing with goods, this shop was small, almost unassuming, yet strangely alluring. The sign above the entrance read, Iyabata's Footwear, best prices, best quality. The shop belonged to a woman named Iyabata, a shoemaker known far and wide for her cheap yet astonishingly durable shoes. Customers came from every corner of Lagos to buy from her, whispering praises of how her shoes outlasted even the most expensive brands. The traders in the market marveled at her success. How did she sell such fine shoes for so little? But there was something unnerving about Iyabata. No one truly knew her past. Some claimed she had once been a wealthy woman whose fortunes had mysteriously vanished. Others whispered that she had been seen speaking to herself at odd hours, her eyes glowing strangely in the dim light of her shop. But these were just rumors, dismissed in the face of the undeniable fact. Iyabata's shoes were too good to resist. Women seeking comfort, men searching for durability, and even the poorest of laborers all found what they needed in Iyabata's shop. But what they did not know was the truth. Every shoe sold came with a terrible price. They were cursed. The curse was subtle, silent. It did not strike immediately but crept into the lives of its victims like a shadow. Yet among the hundreds of unsuspecting buyers, fate was about to weave a cruel story. A couple, Aisha and Kunle, would soon enter Iyabata's shop, unaware that the choices they were about to make would change their lives forever. The afternoon sun blazed over the Lagos market as Aisha and Kunle weaved through the bustling crowd. The air was thick with the calls of vendors, the scent of roasted corn, and the chatter of eager shoppers. Aisha, her belly round with pregnancy, walked cautiously, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. Kunle, her husband, walked beside her, his expression tense. "We don't have money to waste, Aisha," Kunle muttered as they passed a fabric stall. Aisha sighed. "It's not a waste, Kunle. We need new shoes. Mine are falling apart, and yours," she glanced at his worn-out sandals, "aren't much better." Kunle exhaled sharply. Things had been difficult lately. The expenses of preparing for their child had drained them, and Kunle's work as a carpenter had been slow. Every naira mattered. Then, as if fate itself had guided them, they stopped in front of a small shoe shop. The sign read, Iyabata's Footwear, best prices, best quality. Aisha's eyes lit up as she admired the neatly arranged shoes. They were beautiful. Sturdy leather, elegant designs, and shockingly cheap prices. Kunle hesitated. "This place, I've never noticed it before." "Maybe we just never paid attention," Aisha said, stepping inside. Iyabata was already waiting for them. She was a tall, slender woman with skin the color of midnight and eyes that seemed too knowing, too deep. Her head wrap was tied impeccably, and her lips curled into a welcoming smile. "Ah, my dear customers, welcome. You have come to the right place," she said, her voice smooth, almost hypnotic. Aisha smiled politely and picked up a pair of brown leather sandals. "How much for these?" Iyabata's eyes flickered. "For you, my dear sister, only 2,000 naira." Aisha's jaw dropped. Such quality for so little. She nudged Kunle, excitement in her eyes. "We should buy them." Kunle frowned. It was almost too good to be true. He glanced at Iyabata, who watched him with an unreadable expression. "Why are they so cheap?" Iyabata chuckled. "I believe good shoes should be for everyone, not just the rich. My shoes bring fortune and comfort." Kunle still wasn't convinced, but Aisha had already picked out a pair for him. "Let's just take them," she urged. "We can't find a better deal." Their conversation grew tense. Kunle didn't like how quickly Aisha was willing to trust this woman, and Aisha was annoyed that Kunle was always so suspicious. They argued in hushed voices, but eventually Kunle sighed in frustration. "Fine, let's buy them." Iyabata watched them closely as they handed over the money. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. "May these shoes take you exactly where you are meant to go," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Aisha and Kunle didn't think twice about her words. They left the shop with their new shoes, unaware that they had just carried a curse into their home. The moment Aisha and Kunle brought the shoes into their home, the air felt different, thicker, heavier. But they were too caught up in their daily struggles to notice. Kunle wore his new shoes the next morning as he left for work. At first, nothing seemed unusual. In fact, he felt lighter, more confident. But by evening, an unsettling restlessness had settled over him. His thoughts shifted, darkened. He began to look at Aisha differently. Her voice, once soothing, now grated on his nerves. Her presence, once comforting, now irritated him. When she spoke, he barely listened. When she reached for his hand, he pulled away. Aisha sensed the change. "Kunle, is something wrong?" she asked one night as they lay in bed. Kunle exhaled sharply. "Nothing. Just tired." But it wasn't just exhaustion. A distance was growing between them, an invisible wall neither could understand. Then came Temi. Temi was Aisha's best friend since childhood, a woman who had always been like a sister. She often visited, bringing food, gossip, and laughter. But after Kunle wore those cursed shoes, his eyes lingered on Temi in ways they never had before. He noticed her smile, her laugh, the way she touched his arm when she spoke. One evening, while Aisha napped, Kunle found himself alone with Temi. A strange pull, a force beyond his control, drew him closer. The curse whispered in his ear, twisting his thoughts. Before he knew it, he had crossed a line, one that could never be undone. Aisha awoke to a nightmare. Kunle's betrayal shattered her. The man who had once held her close, promised her forever, had been unfaithful, with her own best friend. Tears burned her cheeks, her heart breaking into pieces. As if the betrayal wasn't enough, fate delivered another blow. Aisha's body, weakened by the stress and heartbreak, could no longer carry the weight of her unborn child. She collapsed in pain, her world spinning as she screamed for help. By the time she reached the hospital, it was too late. The child was gone. Aisha lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, hollow and empty. Her marriage was in ruins. Her best friend had betrayed her. Her child was dead. And all the while, in a quiet corner of the market, Iyabata smiled. The curse had done its work. Aisha returned home a different woman. She barely spoke, barely ate. Grief sat on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Kunle, now a stranger in his own home, avoided her. Guilt gnawed at him, but something inside him told him he didn't care enough to fix it. But then, strange things started happening. The shoes, once pristine, now looked worn and dirty despite barely being used. Shadows moved in the corners of the room, whispering just out of reach. At night, Aisha heard distant laughter, low, mocking, female. One evening, as she sat on the floor staring at the cursed shoes, a wave of realization hit her. Everything had changed after they brought the shoes home. Her trembling hands reached for them, and as she touched them, a cold shiver ran through her spine. Something was inside these shoes. Determined to find the truth, Aisha returned to the market. When she reached Iyabata's shop, her blood turned to ice. Standing in the dim glow of the lantern was a figure with hollow eyes, long fingers, and a wicked grin. Iyabata. And she was waiting. Aisha ran blindly through the streets, her breath ragged, her vision blurred by tears. The haunting image of Iyabata's twisted grin burned in her mind. This was no coincidence. This was a curse. She needed help. But where could she go? Who would believe her? Her steps instinctively led her to a familiar place. Mama Folik's house. Mama Folik, Aisha's stepmother, had always been her pillar of strength. Though not her birth mother, she had raised Aisha with kindness and wisdom. If there was anyone who could guide her now, it was her. Aisha pounded on the wooden door, her hands shaking. Within moments, the door creaked open, revealing the elderly woman in her traditional wrapper and headscarf, concern etched on her face. "Aisha?" Mama Falak's eyes widened. "What is it, my child?" Aisha collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Her body trembled as she gasped between tears. "Mama, it's the shoes. Everything changed after we bought them." Mama Falak held her tightly, stroking her back. They sat in the dimly lit parlor, the faint scent of burning incense in the air. Aisha told her everything. The strange shift in Kunle's behavior, his betrayal, the loss of their baby, and the eerie occurrences in their home. And then, the final horror, seeing Iyabata's demonic form. When she finished, Mama Folik's face was grave. She was silent for a long time, her fingers tapping rhythmically on her knee. Then she let out a deep sigh. "My child," she said softly but firmly, "this is no ordinary misfortune. This is spiritual warfare. You were targeted." Aisha swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Mama Falak reached for a small wooden box and pulled out a string of prayer beads. She gripped them tightly as she looked Aisha in the eyes. "We must seek the help of someone who understands these things." Aisha frowned. "Who?" "There is a pastor," Mama Falak said, "a man of great spiritual power. He has fought battles against darkness before. He will know how to break this curse." Aisha hesitated. She had never been overly religious. But what other choice did she have? Without wasting time, Mama Folek took her by the hand and led her out into the night. The church was small, nestled in a quiet part of the city. The wooden doors creaked as Mama Falak and Aisha stepped inside. A warm glow from the lanterns illuminated the space, and the air carried the faint scent of anointing oil. The pastor, an elderly man with wise eyes and a presence that radiated authority, was waiting for them. He listened patiently as Aisha recounted her story once more. When she finished, the pastor closed his eyes, whispering words of prayer under his breath. Then he looked at her with a grave expression. "My child, you have been caught in the web of a dark covenant. Those shoes were never meant to be worn. They were designed to bind, to destroy." Aisha's heart pounded. "How do we stop it?" "You must destroy the shoes," the pastor said. "But be warned, evil does not let go easily. It will fight back." Aisha felt a chill run down her spine, but she squared her shoulders. She had lost too much already. She could not let the darkness win. That night, in Mama Folek's courtyard, a small fire was lit. The shoes lay in the flames, but at first they did not burn. The fire flickered, the flames dancing wildly as if something within the shoes resisted. Then a sound filled the air, a piercing, inhuman scream. Aisha gasped, her hands trembling as the flames roared higher. Mama Folek clutched her prayer beads, chanting words of power. And then Iyabata appeared. She emerged from the shadows, no longer the graceful shopkeeper, but a being of pure darkness. Her once beautiful face was twisted with rage, her eyes glowing like embers. "You dare!" she hissed, her voice layered with something ancient and malevolent. Aisha stood her ground, though fear clawed at her heart. She would not run, not this time. The flames burned brighter, engulfing the cursed shoes entirely. Iyabata let out an ear-splitting shriek. Her body trembled, her form distorting as if unraveling before their eyes. "No, this is not over!" she screamed. With a final unearthly wail, Iyabata crumbled into dust. The wind carried her remains away, leaving only silence. The curse was broken. But was it too late to fix what had been lost? Kunle awoke with a start, his mind suddenly clear. For weeks it had been as though he was trapped inside his own body, watching himself act in ways he didn't understand. The coldness toward Aisha, the betrayal, it hadn't been him. Memories flooded back, and with them, a crushing wave of guilt. Aisha. He had destroyed their marriage. He had left her alone in her darkest moment, and worst of all, he had let the curse take their child. Overwhelmed with remorse, Kunle rushed home. When he arrived, he found Aisha sitting in the courtyard, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lantern. Her expression was unreadable as she looked up at him. Kunle dropped to his knees. "Aisha, I don't know what happened to me. I was blind. His voice broke. "Please forgive me." Aisha studied him for a long time. Did she still love him? Could she ever trust him again? "The curse is broken," she said at last. "But that doesn't mean everything is fixed." Kunle nodded, his heart heavy. He knew she was right. Forgiveness was one thing. Trust was another. And trust had to be earned. Temi stood before her mirror, adjusting the gold necklace Kunle had bought her. It glittered in the dim light of her apartment, a reminder of what she had gained. Kunle, wealth, and a future she never thought possible. Yet as she admired herself, something felt wrong. Kunle had been acting strangely since the previous night. He had left in a hurry, a haunted look in his eyes. He hadn't returned her calls. A sense of unease settled in her stomach. She had done everything right, hadn't she? She had won. Or so she thought. That evening, she decided to visit Kunle. She arrived at his house unannounced. but the sight before her made her stomach drop. There he was, kneeling before Aisha, tears streaming down his face, his voice cracked with emotion as he pleaded for forgiveness. Temmie's breath caught in her throat. Kunle was supposed to be hers. He had chosen her. Fury boiled inside her, but beneath it was something even worse. Fear. Suddenly a whisper filled the air. Suddenly a whisper filled the air. A sinister voice, one she had never heard before. "You were nothing but a pawn, foolish girl." Temmie gasped, her skin crawling as an icy chill swept through the room. The gold necklace tightened around her neck as if unseen hands were squeezing. She clawed at it, struggling to breathe. "You thought betrayal would bring you happiness?" the voice hissed. "Now you will have nothing." The grip loosened, and Temmie stumbled backward. The necklace snapped and fell to the ground, turning to dust before her eyes. A sudden wave of realization crashed over her. She had never truly won. The curse had used her just as it had used Kunle. But unlike him, there was no one to save her. With a shaking hand, she reached for her phone to call Kunle, but his voice, once warm and eager, was now cold. "I don't know what I ever saw in you," he said simply before hanging up. And just like that, Temmie lost everything. Days passed, then weeks. Kunle made every effort to show Aisha he had changed. He stopped drinking, stopped partying. He attended counseling and even visited the church with Mama Falaka. But Aisha remained cautious. She had forgiven him, yes. But forgiveness did not mean forgetting. She needed to see if he was truly different. One evening, Kunle found her in the market, helping an elderly woman carry her heavy basket. The sight of her, so gentle and strong, filled him with admiration. "Aisha," he called softly. She turned, her expression unreadable. "I know I don't deserve another chance," he admitted, "but I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm the man you fell in love with." Aisha studied him for a long time. The pain was still there, but so was something else. Hope. "You can start by being patient," she said finally. Kunle nodded. He would wait, however long it took, because this time he wouldn't take her for granted. Months passed and slowly, life began to heal. Aisha and Kunle mourned their lost child together, finding comfort in each other's arms. Aisha's relationship with Mama Folak strengthened. She realized that family wasn't just about blood, it was about love, guidance, and unwavering support. Kunle, once lost, found purpose again. Not through wealth, not through power, but through love, faith, and redemption. And as for Iyabata's shop, one day Aisha returned to the market, her heart racing as she approached the familiar street. But where Iyabata's shop once stood, there was nothing. No sign of the cursed shoes, no trace of the woman who had caused so much pain. Only an empty space, as if she had never existed. Not everything that seems like a bargain is a blessing. Some gifts come at a cost greater than we can imagine. Forgiveness is powerful, but trust must be earned. Love is not enough. Actions must prove sincerity. Evil thrives in ignorance. Aisha and Kunle suffered because they did not question the source of their misfortune. Always be spiritually discerning. Aisha, now wiser and stronger, walked away from the empty space, knowing one thing for sure, she would never be blind again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating and mind-blowing tales. Stay tuned for more stories filled with wisdom, mystery, and deep life lessons. See you in the next one.